so very much. What can I say? First, to my colleagues in Congress who conspired with this committee to give me this honor, I am overwhelmed. And I am so very honored to be here. And I want you to know that as I look at all of these women who contributed so much, Ms. Boynton, I'm thinking, why am I in this crowd? I mean, what you are going to hear and see today is absolutely phenomenal. But I'm very pleased to be here. And this is entitled Stories That Shaped a Nation, a national commemoration of the women icons, the March on Washington, the Civil Rights Movement, and to be here in Allentown. It's just unbelievable. As a matter of fact, when I told, various friends, and I just got off the phone with Byron Allen, who is all involved in confronting Comcast and all of that, and I said, I can't talk to you now. I'm getting ready to go and participate in an extraordinary program. He said, well, where are you? And I said, I'm in Allentown. He said, where? And I said, that's what makes it so important. It's not New York, it's not California. And so I'm hearing about the memorial and this absolutely fantastic committee, elected officials, all of you who have joined in for this commemoration and the organizing of the statue. And I'm going to try and contribute something about my life and who I am and what I've done. Now, I don't know if you all know, it's hard to do this in 5 minutes. I've lived a long time. And I've been working for many, many years. So when you tell me to condense this into 5 minutes, it's very hard, but I'm going to try. And I'm going to start, not in the beginning, but I'm going to start with something that I'm involved with now. On May 30th in Los Angeles, I'm going to have 5 of the mothers of young black men who have lost their lives because of police who have basically targeted, identified, abused, or just improperly used their power and their guns. I'm going to have in a forum and a luncheon Trayvon Martin's mother, Michael Brown's mother, Eric Garner's mother, Ezell Ford's mother, and Tamir's mother. As you know, from Florida to Ferguson to New York to LA to Cleveland and on and on and on, we're seeing this extraordinary loss of life of young black men. And I start at this point because really this is kind of at the point that I entered real activism. And I wanted to go back and tell you a story about a woman named Eula Love. Eula Love was a young mother in Los Angeles, had 2 daughters, couldn't afford to pay her gas bill. They came out to cut off her gas. And she said, no, I'm not going to allow you to cut off my gas. And so they called the police. LAPD came out and you to turn my gas off. I have to take care of my kids, on and on and on. And in this confrontation, they shot her down on the porch. And so it was about the time that I had just organized something known as the Black Women Forum. And we decided to take on the police chief. His name was Daryl Gates. He was a mean police chief. Yeah. He was an honorary police chief. He was. He was the police chief who had a battering ram, a concoction of metal that He would storm people's houses with and tear down the doors. It was during the time of crack cocaine and a lot of drugs in the area. But he was the one who supported the chokehold. And we had several deaths because of the chokehold, on and on and on. So we took on Daryl Gates and we literally hounded him out of office. We worked because we recognized at that point in time that the police have tremendous power, that we basically support our police department to protect and serve. And then I began to think about my very young life and why we felt so afraid of the police. Because we were reading in the storybooks that the police were the ones who climbed up the tree and got the cat out of the tree. They never got the cats out of the trees in my neighborhood. As a matter of fact, when we talked to the kids in Head Start, where I eventually ended up working, we asked them about the police and, talked to them about the police as being there to protect and serve. And they described the police as someone who breaks down your door and takes your big brother away. And so this business of police abuse didn't just start. This has been a problem all over this country for many, many years. And because at the time that I got involved, I had already, of course, as a young mother, witnessing what was happening in Selma and the hosing of civil rights leaders, had joined the NAACP and joined with some others in Los Angeles to support the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, sending clothes and food and all of that. And so I was beginning to come into myself and to learn who I was as a human being and what I cared about. And so when I got involved with the police, it was because of what was happening in the civil rights movement, and it was because of what was being shown on TV, et cetera, et cetera. And I went on to work in the community on all kinds of projects and efforts, and then the women's movement became very prominent. And so we had someone who had served in the California State Legislative Assembly who decided to quit because of some problems. And he said he had been called by God to get out. And I heard a calling from God to get in. Because the women's movement was growing, yes. Then I got the support of now NAACP, no, not NAACP, National Organization for Women, and all the other women's groups kind of came together behind my candidacy. And the district that I was running in was not quite as diverse as it grew to be. As a matter of fact, it was predominantly poor whites who had not had the experience of a black elected official. And I can recall when the women who were working for me, we would send the white women to the white neighborhoods. And we would send the black women to the black neighborhoods, and on and on and on. And I have to tell you this. When one of the women knocked on the door of one of the whites in the more conservative neighborhood, and they campaigned for me, and they said, "I'm here for Maxine Waters." And the guy absolutely said, "Well, is she a N-word?" And they said, "No, she's a woman." And he said, "Okay." Every trick in the book. And we got elected to office. And again, it was at the height of the women's movement. And Carter, I think at that time, was president. And so we had a national conference in Houston, Texas. And that's where I really met Bella Abzug and Gloria Steinem and all these women in the women's movement who were, really advocating for women's participation in all kinds of ways. And that was a seminal moment and a defining moment. I went back to the legislature where I'd been elected, and I started to create legislation based on some of the stories that we were hearing about violence against women, and on and on and on. That opportunity to serve in the California State Legislature was a great experience for me. Willie Brown became the speaker. He wasn't the speaker when I got there, But after I got there and I started working, we overthrew somebody and made him the speaker. And because of Willie Brown, he appointed me to committees. I became the chair of the Democratic Caucus, on and on and on, and was able to move legislation in a very, very tremendous way. As a matter of fact, out of that legislative experience, I was able to move legislation to stop strip searching of nonviolent crimes that have been committed by individuals, traffic warrants, et cetera, and in LA in particular, but many places in the country, they were strip searching people when they brought them in if they had a warrant for their arrest. I was able to move legislation dealing with sexual child abuse. I was able to move affirmative action, that's what it's called at the time. That's a no-no now. Don't use those words, we call it diversity. I was able to move tremendous legislation on affirmative action, where we brought in minorities and women from all over the country to begin to manage the pension funds, tremendous pension funds in the state teachers' retirement system, public employees' retirement system, and we spread out all over this country to do that. Some of the legislation that, of course, dear to my heart, is the legislation that was mentioned, divestment from companies that were doing business in South Africa. Any of those companies that were involved in California state, PERS and STIRS, who were doing business in South Africa, we created the divestment movement among the states. And of course, the time that I spent working to help get Nelson Mandela out of that jail. And of course, you know, I was very young and I knew no fear at the time, so I proudly announced that I had joined the ANC, the African National Congress. And when they lifted the ban in South Africa for all of those who had been in prison to get back, I was there for real. And so, not only that divestment legislation, my work with the ANC, when Nelson Mandela was released from prison, I brought him to Los Angeles, to the Coliseum, where we had 90,000 people there who welcomed him. And of course, prior to that, when he became president, I was at the inaugural ceremony, and I've never been so moved in my life. This apartheid system that had this inauguration for Nelson Mandela, the planes formed over our heads in all kinds of formations to announce him as the new president. And I was extremely moved, and every leader from every country across the world was there. Let me wrap this up. So let me just say this as I wrap this up. I think I couldn't do this fast. Whether it's about these kids that are losing their lives in these communities all over the country, or whether it's about Nelson Mandela, or whether it's about President Aristide, who I went and rescued from the Central African Republic and brought him back to Jamaica after the coup d'etat. It doesn't matter where it is in the world. Racism and discrimination is wrong. And however we can play that role, whether it's in our local communities, in our schools, wherever it is in our sororities or fraternities, we must do that. We must be committed to the proposition that this country belongs to all of us. And this world must be free of war, must be free of racism, must be free of discrimination and isolation. I go to sleep every night sometimes so disgusted with my colleagues in Congress on the opposite side of the aisle for the most part. I get so upset with the Tea Party, and sometimes I go to bed at night thinking, why am I doing this? But one good night's sleep, and I'm ready to take them all on.